For many years, I complained that the holiday seasons never really felt like the holiday seasons. Through my childhood and through my early adulthood, I had activities and plans that led up to the holidays. And even after I graduated from school and stopped having crafts that I would do in the lead up to holidays, I went into retail where there were sales and other things that went into the lead up to every holiday. And once I left those environments, even as stressful as they were, the one downside is that my new, less stressful life no longer really had the same clear delineating factors and lead up processes to holidays that my previous life had. And I know that I'm not the only one that's like this, because I know a lot of my friends have complained about it, and it's something that I've been working really intensely of trying to fix the past few years. And I can honestly say that the holidays finally feel like the holidays again, not just the winter ones either. I have really worked to make all of the normal holidays, all of the things that are important to me, and honestly a good part of this was adding in holidays through parts of the year that there's not enough other things to celebrate, right? So you don't necessarily need to just stick with the ones we have. You can make entirely new holidays that are just important to you and your family, and you can celebrate them in the way that you choose. That's part of it. But also part of it is just learning how to recontextualize the lead up process of learning how to get your body and your mind ready. But I wanted to share with you all the things that have worked for me in hopes that it would help other people out there, because like I said, I'm sure I'm not the only one who the holidays don't necessarily feel like holidays anymore. This video is divided up into two sections. The first section is a journaling exercise that is designed to figure out how you feel about specific holidays, traditions, etc. The second half of this video is different sensory experiences, things like that you can do in the lead up to a holiday to make it feel more like a holiday to you. It's suggestions of activities that you can do in the lead up to holidays to make them feel more like holidays. So if you just want to skip the lead up activities, they'll be here. So at the very base level, what I started off by doing was listing out the list of holidays and when they fell throughout the year that I thought were important, the things that I wanted to celebrate. And then I looked at the rest of the year and I was like, okay, well, I want to make my bird's birthdays holidays as well, because that gives us extra days in a part of the year where there's not necessarily exciting things to look forward to. I very much manage my own mental health by having something on the horizon to look forward to, and having long stretches of the year where there's not a particularly interesting holiday was not great for me. But once I had a list of holidays that I was interested in, I started writing down what were the traditions that I had, why were the reasons that I followed those traditions, and what were the things that I didn't like about those traditions. And I really tried to be very honest, and I really tried to make sure that this was something that I was just looking at myself, so I didn't need to consider other people's feelings. I do think it's important to consider other people's feelings, just not at this juncture, not quite yet. First, you want to have a list of these are the holidays, these are the things that I want to do in these holidays, these are the traditions that I like to do on these holidays, these are the things that are important for me to do on these holidays, and these are the things that I'm kind of about. Then after a couple of days have passed, revisit your list with a fresher set of eyes and a fresher mindset, and consider other people in the equation. Are these traditions that you're maintaining for your deceased grandmother because it was important to her? Are the people that this was important to actually still alive to this day? And obviously you should consider as well, if you have kids, passing that on to children. If you don't have kids, I wouldn't necessarily make it your personal mission to make all of grandma's traditions stay in the world forever. And sure, if you're one of the last remaining people from a line and there's this tradition that's so rare and almost nobody remembers it, write it down, make a TikTok, put it out into the world if you don't want the tradition to completely go away. You don't have to be the one that is responsible for maintaining all of your family traditions all the time. And I think a lot of people have this idea of what Christmas especially looks like, at least if you come from a family like mine, because my grandma had a very specific definition of Christmas. She had numbered Christmas ornaments that went a very specific place on the tree, and I know that my mother and myself, that was a tradition that kind of screwed with our heads, because in our minds Christmas was something that had to be perfect, and that perfection really wasn't a tradition. It's just what was important to my grandmother. We can have imperfect Christmases because she's in the ground. She does not care that Christmas is not perfect anymore. And you know what? It's nice to remember her and be like, oh wow, grandma would have hated this. Okay, but we don't. You know? When I've led my friends through this exercise, what I have found is that a lot of people did not do things that were important to them because they were prioritizing other people's Christmas traditions. And like I said, I do think that there is a little bit of give if you have kids. Like, part of your holiday and passing on traditions has to keep your kids and their best interests in mind, but also it's not good for kids to grow up with a mother that secretly resents a major holiday and is only going through the motions for the kids. And you don't want to be in that position either. And I think by taking a step back, writing down the things that you like, the things that you don't like, and the reasons why you do them, so you can consider, is this even something that's worth doing? Or I think a lot of us believe that the traditions that are important to us, or the things that we find valuable, are kind of silly and they're not as important as the traditions of our grandparents. Like, if your tradition is just to watch Doctor Who or something like that, that is every bit as valuable a tradition as, you know, the lamb loaf your grandmother's been making for 300 years. Like, it doesn't have to be an old, long-lasting tradition. Like, even if this is the first year you're doing a tradition, that's like, it's a new tradition. It's so very exciting. This is the first year, the the prime one. You can make the novelty of the tradition part of the interest of the tradition. And then the next step for me is a research phase, right? I go to Pinterest. I go through the traditions of like people that are from the same cultural heritage as me, and I look at what they're doing. I look at what things I could incorporate into my traditions that I haven't been doing yet. And I do say pointedly, make sure that you're taking from your own traditions. Like, don't just go over to another country and take their traditions and be like, yeah, this is cool. I personally believe if you're putting like bad energy into the world by stealing and appropriating somebody else's traditions, that you're not going to have the value from it that you believe you're getting from it. So obviously keep that in mind, but keep your mind open as well. Like I said, a tradition doesn't need to be historic to be valuable. It can just be something that you have decided to do as your whole family because it's really important to you now. And it may just be that your tradition is something like your whole family goes to early voting October 30th because you realize that doing your civic duty is important to your family. Like, things don't have to be unimportant just because they're coming out of modernity, because they're not ancient traditions. And once you have a good list of what traditions you are interested in, what traditions you're not interested in, your other family opinions, and then things that other people do that you might want to add to your traditions, then go back to your lists again and write down like, okay, on this holiday, these are the things that are important to me. These are the things that each year I want to make sure that I don't miss. And pointedly, you want 3 different types of traditions, right? You want a tradition that's kind of like a countdown, something that you're doing a couple of weeks before into the lead up to the holiday to get you primed, to get you into the mood, things like that. So a good example of a tradition like this would be something like an advent calendar. Then you need traditions that can be done at any kind of random day throughout the holiday season. So for example, for Christmas, you might do baking cookies, or you might do sending out Christmas cards. It doesn't necessarily need to happen on a specific date, but these are things that you can do if you need to get the spirit of the holiday in you because you're having like a specific day where you're like, man, I'm really bah humbug about this whole thing. And I'm using Christmas as an example now, but like I said, it can work with any holiday, even ones that you're just arbitrarily defining. I'm just using Christmas because I think the large majority of my audience is going to have a vibe for what Christmas usually looks like. Then you're going to have day before and day of traditions. So basically a 48-hour period of things that you can do the day before and the day of that will ensure that when the day after the holiday comes, you're not like, oh wow, the holiday is totally over and I completely missed it. I also think it's very important to personalize these traditions to your life. Make sure every person in your family, every animal in your family, what have you, is involved in some way in the holiday. I know for me, I love my birds a lot. So giving them an advent calendar, doing some holiday baking for treats that they can have, and giving them gifts on the day of, like, that stuff is all very exciting to me because it allows like the family to come together, and even the feathered ones. I don't have to make them feel left out of the occasion. Sensory experiences. There are a lot of sensory experiences that we associate with different parts of the year, and it's going to be different for everybody, but some examples for me are: fall is apple cider and wet leaves, winter is chimney smoke and hot chocolate, spring is dandelion and strawberry lemonade, and summer is watermelon and sea salt. And those are just kind of like really vague, easy things. But I think they're things that are really good to consider when you isolate the kind of sensory experiences that you were used to having during a certain period of year. It makes it easier for you to get your body in the mood for those times of year by utilizing those sensory experiences. So for me, I make sure that I have a different fruit juice for each season of the year. And right now we have just switched to apple cider for the fall season. And I keep apple cider into winter. It's just as it starts to get colder, I heat it up, and then I also supplement it with hot chocolate as well. And that ensures that I kind of have like a consistent sensory, like, this is what time of year it is. And the astute among you will realize that a lot of the things that I'm suggesting are grounding techniques. We'll get back to that. And me personally, I'm really focusing on my nose starting like 2 weeks before a holiday or a season or whatever the period is. And one of the biggest ways that we do that in my family is Bath & Body Works soaps. They have a ton of different seasonal soaps. They're not terribly expensive if you get them during like the different sale periods. They have like periods of time when each one is like $3, and you need soap anyway. So it's one of those things where it's not that big of an expense. You don't necessarily need to use Bath & Body Works. It's just an option that has a lot of different sensory scents available. Because here's the thing, if I wanted to do aromatherapy, I would have to actually think about it. If I just have to like set an alarm to change my soap 2 weeks before the holiday starts, and then I just need to put the soap bottle out and then wash my hands, which I'm going to do probably 37 times a day, it's a really good way to make that part of grounding yourself, of getting yourself in the mood, in the moment, a complete non-issue. You don't have to think about it. It's just something that happens automatically. Gardening. When you garden, you get a lot of natural cues through Mother Nature, and especially as you get more and more interested in gardening, you will start realizing the things that happen, the birds that show up in your yard, the things that are starting to bloom in the different phases of the year. And for me personally, because I live someplace that has like false spring and false winter, I rely on birds and critters and other things, other living things, as my signal about when the seasons are going to actually change for real. And a lot of people withdraw from this suggestion, and I understand that gardening is not for everyone, but gardening is for more people than most people realize. I think one of the big issues that a lot of people have with outdoor gardening is that they grab a plant from the tropics that they think looks pretty and then they slap it in their yard in the middle of Boston. If you stick with things that are designed to live in your climate and are designed to be kind of low maintenance in your climate, it makes the gardening process significantly easier. And while I understand that gardening isn't accessible for everyone, one thing that is accessible for nearly everyone is media traditions. A lot of us already have like movies that we watch on Christmas, or a specific marathon that we watch over New Year's or what have you. And I think actually sitting down and thinking like, what kind of movies remind me of Christmas? What kind of movies remind me of February? What kind of movies remind me of Easter? Things like that. And not just movies, but also music, television shows, web series, anything that you regularly consume content or media wise, figure out the things that remind you of various seasons and watch them. And I do know that a lot of people, myself included, have suffered ever since J.K. Rowling has been outed as her true evil form, because I used to watch Harry Potter pretty much every year into the fall season to kind of like get my end of summer into fall vibes. And for a couple of years, I didn't really know what to watch, and I've been replacing it with both Gravity Falls and Over the Garden Wall, and that has been really great for me. And one of the things that is really nice for me is that particular transition is very difficult because my body usually suffers. So media traditions are things that I can do that make me feel in the mood, in the moment, again, without additional labor, without additional effort. I can participate in these traditions from my bed, from my couch, from wherever I happen to be slumped over at any given moment. It's not something that needs to be difficult or expensive or involved, but it's something that gets my senses in the moment of where they need to be. Let's discuss, is it trauma? As I mentioned earlier, the astute among you will recognize a lot of these as like grounding or centering techniques, and that's for a reason. Like a lot of people that like it doesn't feel like the holidays, the reason it doesn't feel like the holidays is because to some degree you are not like fully in the moment all the time. You're like dissociated off in your head, you're doing your own thing up here, you're not processing the world around you. And I know from personal experience that a lot of times would happen is my brain would still be in like summer mode, and then my body would hit the brick wall that is fall. And then by the time I recovered from hitting that brick wall, it was like Christmas and my brain was still in summer mode. And by the time my brain got in Christmas mode, Christmas was already 2 months past. And I think that a lot more people have trauma, especially trauma from like their childhoods, trauma that's associated with specific times of year or what have you, than many people realize. So honestly, part of making holidays feel like holidays again is going to be going to therapy, actual proper like trauma-informed therapy, not just whoever's closest to you that accepts your insurance. I admit this is not accessible to everyone. Trust me, I know it's not very accessible to everyone, but if it is accessible to you, it's something that I would look into. Schedule things. I kind of got into this earlier, but I want to make sure that there is always something within the next month or so that I have to look forward to. So I went through a calendar of the year and I looked through every month, and if there wasn't an existing holiday that I looked forward to, I made one up. Like I said, I made all 3 of our pets birthdays a holiday, so I have an extra holiday in April, an extra holiday in June, and an extra holiday in November. November just deserves extra holidays, let's be real. That time of year, I just want to celebrate for celebration's sake. And I make sure that I have reminders a month and 2 weeks before everything that is important to me. So I have like, hey, Halloween's coming up in 2 weeks. Make sure you're doing your like lead up traditions. Make sure you're starting to think about things. Make sure this holiday doesn't sneak up on you. Nowadays, it's very easy for time to slip past in a moment's notice without you even realizing it. And I think it's very important to be more cognizant of this and having like reminders, and like if you use an app like Finch or something like that, that remind you like, hey, let's get in the mindset. Let's start planning. Let's start doing the things that we need to do to make this holiday work. It can really be helpful to us. Journaling. I think that everybody should journal in some form or fashion, but please don't think that you need to have some perfectly perfected little amazingly beautiful journal for your journaling to be valid. You don't even need to do it every day for it to feel valid. First off, I just think that there's always a value that comes from having a place to put your thoughts and like actually look at them. But also it's very easy to make your journal at least lightly themed. Like for example, right now my journal has orange sparkly pen ink and I'm using a lot of Halloween themed stickers, and like it's a junk journal so it looks like crap, and I'm just like sticking leaves in it and stuff like that. But that stuff reminds me of fall. It makes me feel fall-y, and I love having like a junk journal, especially because I have like little bits and bobs that I'm like, oh, I like this. This is so pretty. And then a lot of times I just throw them away or something like that, or I set them aside because I don't have any place to organize them. I don't have any place to categorize them. Like even if all you do is just glue different receipts and stuff from different events that you go to, and like little bits of trash that you find pretty from those events, that's a worthwhile junk journal because you're going to see those things and you're going to remember back to like what you were doing, like what the activity that they're associated with. Crafts is another big one. I think a lot of us, especially people that grew up at the time when I grew up, believe that if you can't do something for money and if you can't do something that like looks really good and professional craft-wise, you shouldn't be crafting. Personally, I believe that crafting, singing, dancing, and journaling are something that everyone in their lives should be doing, whether they're good at it or not, whether they can make it look or sound good or not, because those things are just part of like enjoying the human experience, if that makes sense. But crafts are a really great way to keep minds and fingers busy, especially when you don't feel that great. Like there's a reason why when you go to the psych ward, a lot of times they make you do art therapy, even if all you want to do is like make friendship bracelets or color in a coloring book. Like that stuff is all profoundly both grounding and healing in a lot of different ways. And nowadays there are more ways to learn how to do like different skills or different crafts than ever before. Like you can learn how to knit or sew or embroider or whatever it is a lot easier and a lot more cheaply than ever before as well. Like I see a number of really nice but also really well priced craft sets on TikTok almost every day, and it's so great to have like little projects and things and bits and bobs that you do that remind you of the vibe of the moment, like that make you feel like the season. Like one of the reasons why holidays felt like holidays when we were kids is because we did a different craft project every pretty much month or so that was seasonally seasonally oriented. Doing that as an adult will help orient you in the seasons as well. And you might get something cute out of it. Finally, a wardrobe. The past few years, I have been waiting until spring and then buying up like cute decorated cardigans because I know that as soon as it gets cold, I'm going to start to be like sad and the seasonal depression will creep in. But if as soon as I feel cold, I go to my closet and I pull out like the cutest cardigan that I've ever seen and I slip into it. And like I said, because this is something that I now know that I plan to do, I also now know that like when things go on like super mega discount in the middle of summer because no one wants a cardigan in the middle of June, that's a great time to get wardrobe. It's a good time to invest in the things that will keep me healthy and happy during the winter. I also do think that a part of seasonal depression is just like how uncomfortable physically you can feel at times, and having the right clothes, having just nice, warm, soft, comfortable, comforting clothes to wear during that, especially that like first couple of weeks when you're just like adjusting to it, it's a game changer. Like I said earlier, these are just things that have really helped out for me. Please let me know down in the comments below if you've tried things yourself that have worked out really well for you, because I really want this to be a resource to other people who the holidays aren't, you know, necessarily what they used to be anymore. So let me know your feedback down in the comments below. As always, I am still a small channel, so your likes, comments, and subscriptions really do help me out a ton, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.